Welcome back, everyone, to R2Kast number 51. Today we have Coull Farm Islay. We have Andrew. Sophie is not jumped on camera today. We've got Andrew of Coull Farm Islay, which I've been calling Coull Farm Islay for the last year and a half since I've been aware of it, but I've been told off camera that is wrong. So, Andrew, would you like to say hello?
Hello, how's everyone?
Before we get on into another excellent episode of the R2Kast, I would just like to thank the sponsor for the show today, The Scottish Farmer. A weekly magazine highlighting everything you need to know regarding the Scottish agricultural industry, whether it's breaking news, events happening in the sector, market reports, classified ads, or just wholesome stories happening in the industry. The Scottish Farmer's got it for you.
So, two Islanders today. It's always quite fun when I have another Islander on. I have noticed I am yet to film with someone from Arran. So I have made that mistake and not actually realised. My dad said to me on the phone, how many folk have you had on from Arran? And I was like, I'll have had, none. So we do have one coming up. We have John and Chelsea who've just moved over to Arran from Iona. So we are going to do an Arran episode as well, but it's great to have another Islander on. It's quite fun to have someone else that understands the issues with CalMac and such like. But I'm sure we don't have to get into that. Andrew, could you tell us a bit talk about yourself and Sophie if you want, or yourself, or we'll see how this sort of episode goes. A bit of background about yourself.
I was born in Paisley, but mum was flown out like one night, born out there and back the next day, and been brought up on Islay ever since. Been on the farm all my life. Worked off it, back on it, a couple of jobs off it again, and I've been back here full time since for the last about 14 years or thereabouts. Sophie, she's lived here for the last, will be coming up 7 years now, and getting more and more involved with the day-to-day farming life for their own wee flock of sheep now and whatnot. So it's fairly growing.
And it's I follow so many accounts on Instagram, and I'm sure, like you'll know, you meet a lot of different folk on these accounts and stuff like that, and you start sort of picking up little stories about them. But I must have been following you guys since I started really doing this stuff for a good while anyway, and it's been quite good fun. And what drew me in, and from what you've just said, I think this might be Sophie's influence, was the Kerry Hills, a sheep I'm very fond of, and I think if I was at home, I might have pushed for some, but I'm not at home. I don't think they would fit in my 17 square foot flat. It might be a bit tricky. But you moved away. Yeah, that's the case. I take it you're not allowed to be born, if possible, on the island. Is that the same case as?
Some folks are born or have been born on the island. Some folks have been born on the plain. Paisley, but I think most would have been born in Paisley. Certainly in my era, anyway. I think everybody in my year in school, I think, was born in Paisley. So it just is what it is, like,
Yeah, no, I think the rule back home is, if possible. I mean, obviously, there's an emergency, that's different. But if possible, they would take you over to Irvine if it was your first child, and then if everything was fine, second, third, and fourth would be on the island. Mainlanders are probably listening to us at the minute, thinking what is happening. But yeah, such is the way of island life. You came back 14 years ago. You said there, Andrew. What were the jobs you had before you came back?
I worked on one or two other farms, just part-time kind of thing. There wasn't enough work full-time on this farm for me, so it was just kind of jobbing about, and I worked for a local contractor for a few years after I left school. Well, actually be a couple of years after I left school, to be fair. That was the last job I had before coming back full-time, so it was really, there was no plan at the time to come back full-time. It was just, the dad was, he's got back problems and it was getting worse and whatnot. So there came a time you had to make the decision. So it wasn't leaving the job I was at wasn't the easiest decision, but it was the right decision at the time, like, So, but with
So coming back wasn't always the plan, no.
But not quite as soon as I did. But I've been back since I was kind of 2021. I've been back on the farm, so it's it fell into place quite a thing. And I went back I was just a kind of general farm worker. Dad managed the farm, and then we took it over. I think this will be the 5th year we've been contract farming the whole lot, since the actual owner of the farm passed away. We took it on a contract farming basis, and it's kind of given a bit extra freedom to run it as you wanted, rather than being that tied way, if you like,
And yeah, feel free to not go into detail here if you don't want, Andrew, but I think I started this podcast with a lot of folk asking me, how do I get into farming? And I think we all know how impossible buying land is, and how just about as difficult leasing land is and renting land is. How does contract farming work?
Contract farming is basically the way we've signed up for it is we supply the machinery and manpower to run the farm on a day-to-day basis, if you like. The owners, they supply the land, the buildings, infrastructure, livestock. They buy all the seed, fertilizer, medicines, everything that's, all that they buy, and then you get paid a set rate agreed. Every contract farming agreement is different, but then at the end of it, there's I think most of them will be the same, where you've got a kind of profit share at the end of the year. So it's an incentive. So the better you do, the more, the more profit there is to be made at the end of it, so. But as for into farming, if it wasn't for the fact that, Dad managed the farm for 40 something years, and I think it'd been nearly 40 years he managed it for the one owner, who, let's say, sadly passed away, and it went into placement into trust. That's when they decided to make it contract farming. If it wasn't for that connection with Dad and that family, I don't know how I'd have got into farming, to be quite honest with you, on the island.
Is that maybe that sort of, maybe not fear of not managing to get in, the reason you came back earlier than you intended?
Possibly, aye. I was. I think I'd always planned on taking over from Dad on the farm, but it kind of got at that point that if I didn't go back, things might have changed drastically to a point that maybe it would have got too far, that you wouldn't have, the farm might not have been the way it is now, and you wouldn't have wanted to go back after that. So it was, aye, you're probably right. It was a good part of the reason, I think, yeah.
It's probably quite handy that the owner has to buy the fertiliser this year.
Aye, well, to be fair, we had nearly 20 tonne of fertiliser saved up over the last few years, just a few tonne here and there, and just kept it in the shed and bought what we kind of budgeted over the last few years. And then, we've always had extra, and this year we decided to, we'll cash in on this spare stuff. And so we didn't buy near as much as usual this year. So it was a godsend.
Yeah, you hear some, avid folk on here talking about, we thought, it'll go down. That may be back. There's Surrey having his opinion. That it'll go down over time, and then they're like, we have made the biggest mistake. Some folk bought it early and are just, praising the Lord, whatever. But it's a strange place it's in. And I've spoken at it a few times on the podcast. It'd be quite interesting to hear your opinion on it. Me, as someone who's not on an arable place, do you think it goes up? Do you think it goes down? Do you think we never see fertiliser at the price we had a year and 18 months ago?
Well, with the rate up last week, we talked about that very thing, and they reckon at some point it'll come back down. But they say it could be years, if ever, that it comes back down to what it was kind of 2 years ago. Same with fuel. All they're saying the same thing with fuel, that it might never be what it was 2 years ago. I mean, this time last year, the fella got in March was 64 point something pence a litre for red diesel. This year was 125. So, it's nearly doubled in price in a year, and you can't run without it, I'm afraid.
I mean, red diesel's sitting where diesel should be. That's what I'm used to diesel being. we all. I don't know why I'm the one that's used to it. Everyone else buys diesel. It's quite a shot, and it's quite funny for reference. We were sitting in the college, we're having a chat with the students and getting them to count up price or whatever. And I sat down and checked how much I'd driven, and I got the car, a new car, not a brand new car, a new car around lambing time, and basically sat not moving for the most time of lambing time, and I worked out that in 5 weeks I've done about 5,500 miles. And I then started to convert what that meant for the bank account. I was like, time to sell the car. I don't need this. It's a mental time from a cost inputs perspective.
Aye.
But what size is the farm?
I treat it one. Dad's got a bit of rented ground. He rents about 300 acres, but it's kind of in between the bits that on Coull farm. So all in all, we're about 1,900 acres in total.
And it's, I mean, I'm quite embarrassed for my knowledge here. How big, let's say, population wise, is Islay? Any idea?
About 3,500, I think, thereabouts. It's under 4,000 anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's smaller than Arran, but Arran's quite hilly, obviously. But it's totally different systems running both islands. It's quite interesting to compare the two. You've sort of touched upon what's on the farm, but could you maybe go in a bit more depth as to what livestock you've got?
Aye, we're running 750 breeding ewes on the farm, plus Dad's 250 in his bit. We're 80 beef cows in total, mainly spring calvers. There's the odd, well, sometimes if we'll bull some heifers in kind of January and calve them a bit earlier, but spring calving really. And we're growing 97 acres of cereal for Bruichladdich distillery this year, so it's a mixed kind of input, like, you know, but there's only so much good ground we've got for growing like your barley and whatnot and your rye, and you could grow more if you didn't have stock, but because you wouldn't need the fields for silage or grazing or whatever. But I prefer to have an egg in many baskets rather than them all in the one kind of thing, you know.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I think I know, looking into this sort of whatever Brexit means type future and that sort of thing, I think the multiple basket idea is a good one. What breeds of ewes and breeds of cattle is it? There's obviously some Kerry Hills, but
Sophie's got a Kerry Hills, and I've got a few pure Suffolks and blue Leicesters, but the rest are Scotch mule, Cheviot mule on the low ground, and blackface and pure Cheviots up on the kind of higher, the rougher grazing kind of thing. So a bit of a mix. We're kind of upping the Cheviots a wee bit, even we've kind of cut back a wee bit on the crossbred ewes just to and up the Cheviots a wee bit the last couple of years, and continue to do that over the next couple of years as well. As for cows, we're predominantly Angus cross now. We're only running 2 Angus bulls. We've still got some Simmental cross cows, but we're kind of phasing them out. We've got mostly Angus, and we'll have about 15 blue grey and white shorthorn cross for the kind of rough grazing areas.
There's a lot of folk up in Cheviots. What made you make that decision?
I've always liked the Cheviots personally, but the farm, or the owner didn't. He liked the mules, you know, the Scottish mules, lots of lambs and whatnot. But I just find the Cheviot, they just do well here. You know, you can put them to any tup. You can put them to your Suffolk, your Texel, run them pure, run them to Blue Leicester and breed your Cheviot mules. And I'm just finding we're probably not getting enough out of our mules, to be quite honest with you. And the Cheviots they're probably doing better than they should be. So it just makes sense going forward. You know, cost wise as well, they're just doing on the farm, particular area we're in. I don't know what it is, but they're doing more than what they should be doing. So we're just upping the numbers a wee bit each year.
No, I mean, you'll be probably into two figures the amount of folk that have said it in the podcast that are looking at doing that. I'm obviously not only talking to sheep farmers either. So, you know, my mum and dad are looking at doing it, or not looking at doing it, they're doing it like yourselves. And I don't know, I'm not at home enough to sort of see the progression of the full year and stuff like that anymore. But there's something I like about them. There's a bit of ease of management with them compared to their opposition counterparts as well. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and a lot of people are going down that route. From a Suffolk, Blue Leicesters and Kerry Hill perspective, are you using them for breeding for yourselves, breeding to sell, or mix of the two?
It's all so far. Well, I think Sophie's planning on with the Kerry Hills. She's hoping to be selling at the society sales. Hopefully this year will be the first one, which will be quite exciting, to be quite honest with you. But the Suffolks and the Blues, they're just purely for the farm. They're just trying to that's born and bred and a bit more acclimatised to, because we're pretty exposed where we are on the farm. You know, there's not a lot of shelter, so it's hard to get hardy tups, if you like. You know, so we're just trying to born and bred on the farm. They just seem to last that wee bit kind of thing. They're never big, showy, fancy sheep, but they don't take half the feeding, and they just seem to live, like, you know. So it works. It's not for everyone, but it works for us, like, you know.
Hardy and Blueface Leicester is not something I've heard in a sentence before.
They're hard to come by, but like I say, it's trying to get a blue Leicester through. If you get it through the first winter, I think you're doing all right over here. But you know, getting a shearling to work as a two-shear, yeah, more often than not, they're not fit to go out the next year, like, you know. So the homebred ones, like I say, they're not near as big as what you'd buy at sales and whatnot. Not as fancy either, but the lambs are just as good, so it makes sense.
Aye, no, definitely. From what I understand, Sophie is very much in your shop. But what do you think of the Kerry Hills?
I'm well impressed with them. It took a long time for me to come round to them, to be quite honest with you. It was just kind of something out of the ordinary, and she was at me for a few years about them, and it never happened. And then she got a few kind of just last lambing time. I think the first lot came, and then it just spiraled from there. And I say this is the first lambing we've had. You know, they're all, apart from she bought a couple at the end lamb sale in December, but everything else was tupped on the farm and reared through the winter and then lambed on the farm. And to be quite honest, you can't fault them for the mothering ability of these sheep is unbelievable, like, you know. So, and they're doing well. The lambs are growing well. They're thriving. They're wild, but see, if you're working in a sheep handling system, or we've got a fixed one as well. We had them in the fixed one the other day. They just run. You know, they run up races. They keep moving. There's none of this having to push them up. You know, So the answer to your question is so far well impressed, but you know, there's a long way to go yet.
I don't know if the camera sort of jumps to whoever's talking and stuff. I don't know if it jumped to Andrew at the right time there, but Sophie's thumbs up definitely came in at the side of the screen. So I don't know if this is sort of like that was Andrew's opinion with a gun to his head, or if that actually was Andrew's opinion.
No, well, to be honest, we put one of our top lambs, we put a few Scottish mules, and we put the shearling she bought, we put him to some black faces as well. And these, I think, well, I'm not going to say too much, but you know, they're not unlike the Scottish mule to look at out the blackface yow, but they're just almost born ready for the winter. You know, they're born with a thicker coat. They might not grow as big, and they might have you know, a quarter of a lamb less than compared to a Scottish mule. But if you're not having to put half the inputs into them, you know, it'll be interesting to see how they do as, you know, as breeding yows on the farm in a year's time, like, you know.
And how many lambs are you getting normally? 1, 2, or is it, you know, where are they in that sense?
In the Kerry Hills, they came off yesterday. We tagged them all, and 10 yows on that lot with 16 lambs. So there's 1.6 out of that lot. So, you know, they're doing all right. They're not, well, we struggle to be getting 200% in the Scottish mules at, you know, even at scanning time. It's just, you know, we were getting 200 plus 20 years ago in the mule side of things, but we were lambing in March, We're lambing beginning.
Okay.
Obviously, earlier you tap them, the more lambs you're getting, but we were losing too many. It's all very well having a lot of lambs born, but if you're losing them with weather, no grass, bloody blah. So we we're lambing nearly 6 weeks later than we used to be. So you've got to take the hit one way or the other with that kind of thing. So,
and truth is, really, the second you start going above 200%, you want it to stop.
I don't like triplets. I can't be doing with them. We had blooming one or two, certainly one at 5 this year, but that was, it wasn't a miracle, but it was a miracle that we're all 5 alive, and the 5 of them are still alive. But I just can't be doing. I'm quite happy with. We've got kind of ground above the beach that does a right good job even of singles. Mules go down there with singles, and the lambs will be sold beginning of August at 40 plus kilos. So that suits us.
The odd one is fine. But I mean, when you're starting to see your percentage at 210, 215, you're going to see a few, and that's a bit.
I think Dad, when he was getting the 200 plus, I think it was about 400 Scottish mules, and I think it was about 100 sets of triplets out of the 400, and it was just, it was a headache,
Aye, no, absolutely. Are you rearing all lambs fat, or are you selling any store?
No, we'll sell most of them store, to be quite honest with you. They'll all go. Some of them will be away fat, but they're all through Bridgend, the local market, and some folk the butcher will buy a few. The local butcher will buy a few. Specific fat sale on the island. It's just a store lamb sale, and that's what it is like.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And beef side, why have you chose what you have?
Well, we were when I kind of came about. Even when I was in my teens, it was Simmental cross, a lot of Ling cross, Sim Ling cows, and running to the Simmental bull. But I was just finding latterly that they were getting pretty big, to be fair, for outwinter cattle. A lot of, not problems, but there was, like the Simmental, the milky teats, and a lot of calves, stupid, dopey calves that were needing time spent giving them a suck and whatnot. So we started running the Angus bull probably 10, 15 years ago, and it's just kind of gradually gone from there, that we've been breeding our own replacements. And now I calved 2 cows, I think, or 3 cows this year, 1 cow last year. You've 1 or 2 calves you need to bring in to give a suck to. One I had to bring in the other day because the cow calved on her back, so she was a bit weak in her back legs. So brought the calf in. Actually, the weather was pretty bad, so I brought the calf in and brought the cow in 2 days later. Once she was kind of a bit fitter on her feet, and put the calf in for a suck, and she was out the next day. So there's just far less with the Angus. We're finding there's far less labour intensive than what we were used to, and a lot quiet, easy handled. Without the problems, if you like, as well. We're pretty ruthless. If a heifer causes a problem, fine. But if she causes it again the next year, we don't bother keeping them. Trying to get down the route of not performance recorded, but weaning out the ones that aren't performing well enough, and it is working. It's a slow process, but we are getting there.
I think we all at some point have that sort of sentimental battle, and then you're like, nah, have a policy, stick to it, and it always works out better. Yes, sometimes you're like, quite like her or whatever, but I think everyone you hear that goes down this is my rule and I'm following that always is better off. It just works better. This is a bit of a random question, but do either of you have other jobs? Are you both full time on the farm?
She's full time as an operator at one of the distilleries, so Coull distillery. So she's got a full time job. So the farming's just a part time thing, and come home from work and go back to work, help me a sheep or whatever,
And you said, is it? I was embarrassing myself so bad. Coull?
Aye. That's it.
Yeah. Because is it 11 distilleries you have on Islay?
There's that many getting built.
I think it is, but there's Sophie just said there's that many getting. I think there's another 2 getting built at the moment, and there's plans in for a third one there. So I think it's 11 and 2 getting built, but I might be wrong.
And you probably don't have the answer to this because you're a farmer, you're not in charge of the distillers. But why? Why is there so many? What's the reason? What happened on Islay that they thought, you know what? Let's have more distillers than we have people. Why did that come about?
I don't really know. I'm not going to try and answer it in a way that it could be wrong because I genuinely don't know. But what I do know is it's getting to, well, I think it could be getting to the stage that it could be too many. There's very little unemployment on the island, and building distilleries, you're having to bring in folks from the mainland, and then the knock-on effect from that is there's no blooming houses for staff. So I don't know what the reason is for so many, because that's if there's 2 getting built just now, and then you had Ardnahoe a few years ago, any other new ones, Kilhoman next door, they were 15. Maybe 2005, I think they were, or thereabouts. So there's quite a few newer ones in quite a short space of time. So I don't know what the reason was, but you just wonder where they're going to stop.
I'm just, when you were talking there, trying to write as many down as I could think. Let's see if these are even all from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I've got 7. Tell me if these are wrong. Bowmore.
Aye, yeah.
Lafroig. Yeah. Coull, like we're saying. Bruichladdich.
Yeah.
Bunnahabhain, is it?
Yeah.
Lagavulin, Kilcoman that you said.
Yeah.
So there's one beginning with A and I can't get it. But anyway, that's not why we're here.
Ardbeg, that's one of them.
That's it, Ardbeg. And I don't know, it's quite interesting. Have you been to all of them?
I don't think I have, actually, no.
I'm sure you've tried all of them.
Probably not. It tends to be the ones, well, Bruichladdich I've been to, obviously, because we do quite a lot with them, but I think the ones that I'll have been to will be ones that will have like a coffee shop or, you can get your lunch or whatever there. The ones that I won't have been to will be, ones that don't have these facilities.
Oh, some are just a distillery. They're not a guest.
They've all got, I think they've all got centres, but not all of them will do like lunches or whatever. So,
no, the 2 back home on Arran are, and the new one is very visitory. But
I hope you've kicked your feet up and got comfy and enjoying another fantastic episode of the R2Kast with another really interesting guest. I would just like to quickly take another second to plug the sponsors of the show today, the Scottish Farmer, and I would strongly advise you to go out and pick one up this week and see even more of the fantastic people that are in our industry.
Is Islay touristy?
Very, yeah, big time.
Purely for that or for other things?
I think the whiskey is the biggest thing, to be quite honest with you. But then you've got a lot will come in the winter time, or well, any time. But you will get a lot of bird watchers in the winter, geese and whatnot. But you'll get bird watchers all year round. But whiskey will be the biggest thing, and followed by the kind of wildlife aspect of things.
And you mentioned you do quite a bit with Bruichladdich. Embarrassing myself today. Bruichladdich. No.
That's right. Yep, yeah, that's the one.
I don't know if it's clear. I either can't say anything about Islay or I don't know, but I do not like whiskey. It makes me sound the way I sound at the minute, as if I've got COVID, which I don't have. Don't know why I'm telling you. You're about 300 miles from me. You're not going to get it. But I always sort of like the idea of whiskey, and it looks, and folk that collect whiskey just look cool, but I am it hurts my tum-tum too much in my throat, so I avoid it at all costs. Pornstar Martini or I'm out. How does that contract come about? Did you go to them? Did they come to you?
Well, the honest answer is we went to them. It wasn't originally planned. It was a farm not the neighbouring farm, but the farm next to that grew first for them. Raymond Stewart at Sunderland Farm, which I think it was actually Control was the name of the bit that he was growing for them in 2004, I think it was. Or 2005, I can't remember. But anyway, that's how it started. And Kilhoman, when they opened up next door, they're the next door farm to us. We ended up growing a field for them in 2000, and I think it was either 2008 or 2009. I can't just quite remember. But when it came to, I don't know, I can't remember what time of the season because I wasn't dealing with it back then. But Kilhoman decided that they didn't want the barley, which that was fine, like, because we've been growing barley for years for feeding cattle. So Dad, he was very friendly with one of the chaps at Bruichladdich, the late Duncan McGilvery, and he just got in touch with Duncan and said, "Look, we've got this field of barley. Do you want it before we prop corn it and shove it in the shed?" And says, "Aye, we'll take as much as you got." And we never looked back from I think it was 2009. We've not looked back from then, like, you know.
And does all of your malt and barley go there?
Aye, the whole lot goes there, yeah.
And is all of your barley reaching malting grade, or some feed, or is it all malting?
No, it's all malting. It's all used by them for the whiskey. So the last, I think, 2 years now, it's been getting kept separate, so they can actually distill ours on its own. So what, 8 years down the line, maybe we'll have our own one bottled. So it's quite looking forward to that.
That's cool. Literally. I like that a lot. That's good. You should call it "That's Cool." No, you shouldn't. That's dreadful. And how does that go, having someone in the partnership literally working for the competition?
Well, Kalila, they bring all their barley in from the mainland, like it all comes in by boat. So their competition in terms of they're a different name on the label, but at the end of the day, they would never affect the farm. They would never buy barley off us. You know, for the amount of stuff they go through, I don't think it'd be worth their while even trying local stuff. So we get.
Yeah, for sure. Are they one of the biggest ones on the island then?
The biggest.
I think Kalila are the biggest producers.
Are they?
Yeah.
Oh, see, I would have almost definitely said Lafroig. That's quite interesting.
Right.
I've always known folk with it. I don't think I can pick. I think, is that Kalila in the background? I can't. It's a bit.
Yeah.
Aye, that's one of them. Yeah, but I think does Kalila go into blends? Aye, Kalila. Yeah. A lot of Kalila whiskies into blends. So.
Aye, right. Okay, that makes a bit more sense. And I think you mentioned rye as well.
Aye, we've been growing rye for Bruichladdich for 2017. We put a spring crop of rye in for Bruichladdich. That just came about. We're just kind of wondering. Alan Logan, the manager of the distillery, at that point, Dad and myself were in the local Coast Guards, as was Alan. He still is. And we just got talking one day. I think it was an exercise or something, and just said, "Look, is there anything else that we could try out with the barley that you wanted, kind of thing? If there's ever anything, then let us know." And probably a year passed, and then another Coast Guard thing. He said, "What do you know about rye?" And I said, "Well, nothing. How?" And went from there and asked if we would try it. So we did. We put a spring crop in, harvested it, and successfully. But then the problem was the rye now is basically getting the seed is getting bred not to ripen because there's that much of it going into AD plants and whatnot. So the spring stuff is really, if you put a spring crop in, it's not going to harden it's not going to go to full length for combining, like, you know. So we had to then go down the route of the winter crop, and that was just a whole new bloody thing for over here. Between weather, geese, and this, that, and the next thing, we thought it's not going to work. But we got a crop in, got it harvested, and we've harvested every winter crop since then. And the yields aren't what they should be if you put a winter crop in the mainland compared to, you know, that. They're not what they should be, but they are getting a yield. They are successful, and we are getting better. It's getting, you know, picking the right field that's not going to get completely waterlogged over the winter. So it's working well. It's quite good fun as well. It's something different. And the 2017 one, I think, will be bottled this year. We got a sample of it. I think, when it was a month in the cask, and then I think it was a year or 6 months later we got another sample, and it was quite good to see it, growing, if you like, changing in the cask. And we got a sample this year. A couple of months ago, they gave us some, and it's actually quite nice, to be quite honest with you. So it's quite exciting. It's something different, and I think they were, if they weren't the first, they were one of the first in Scotland to be making a kind of rye whiskey, if you like,
I'm so glad you mentioned dry whiskey and it being in the cask and that, because my next question was it for beer or for whiskey, because I genuinely didn't know the answer. I know you can make both, but it's quite interesting you said, the changes in the breeding of it, and that's happening with a lot of things, that everything is towards anaerobic digesters, biomass boilers.
Yeah.
My first 2 weeks, the first time out down to Essex when I was learning to drive a telehandler when I was 19, was just burning, I think it was 650 Heston bales of straw that 95% of were fine in my head. Fine, better than what we get. Because it didn't reach the biomass grade. Aye. And it's kind of like the putting trees on arable ground. It's like, okay, but
the thing about the trees is, once, in my opinion, once the ground's under trees, that's it, gone. And it's
100%. Yeah.
Getting that land back is just not going to happen. And I'm not a fan of it personally, but that's just me from a farming point of view. I know there's money to be made at putting your, giving up your land for the trees, but I say we're a mixed farm. With the cattle are all bedded on straw grown on the farm, as are the sheep. What comes off the field straw wise goes back on the fields as straw dung. We're fattening lambs through the winter. We're putting weight on lambs, not go off fat, but we're putting lambs onto rape and stubble turnips through the winter time. And it's more, I think, trying to save the planet is maybe more about how your rotation works, rather than putting your whole bloody farm under trees. It's and I still don't think farming isn't the planet's the way it is, kind of thing. But it's a drop in the ocean. As Scotland, England, whatever, planting, I don't care how many trees they plant, it's a drop in the ocean compared to what's needed to reduce carbon footprint, if you like.
Well, exactly. And I speak about this quite often with folk about what their opinion of the tree thing is. I don't think really anyone agrees with putting it on, for example, the ground you're growing malt and barley on. That is utter madness. Nothing in my head that I can't even put my head into the other side and be like, okay, makes sense, because it doesn't. You would get the exact same harvest if you put that on some hill you can barely get a sheep in 40 acres. That's what trees are good for.
Exactly.
That's what they do. But yeah, we could. I think I've on too many occasions been in the podcast challenging the poor forestry folk, and I'll never have anyone on the podcast from forestry the way I've attacked them every time. But so sorry, forestry fans and other forestry lecturers at SRUC. I still want to keep my job. The rye, what's the straw like?
I've never actually used it, to be quite honest with you. It's they say that it's not that great for bedding. They do say it's good as feed straw, to be quite honest with you. But we thought it does take rye takes a bit out of the ground in your P and K kind of side of things. So we just chop the straw and put it back in. But what we've noticed with the barley crop following the rye, and we thought it was just coincidence. The first year we done it, but the barley crop following the rye has been the best crop on the farm on the year. So whether it's coincidence or not, I don't know, but there's just something about the rye that's given something back to it. Deep rooted, it'll find nutrients way down, kind of thing, and whether it's bringing some of them up with it or not, I don't know. I'm not technical enough in that side of things, but certainly visually the following crops from the rye have been tremendous, kind of thing. And one thing with the rye is it's clean. It just, this year it's needed no chemicals on it. It's not had, it had a growth regulator, but that's all it's had. It's not needed weed killer. anything of that. So there's advantages to the rye as well, kind of thing. You know, out with it, you know, being good fun to do something differently. You know,
just light bulbs going off in my head when you said that there. But it's quite hard on the nitrogen in the soil, and then your barley was good. Molten barley quality has to be under 1.85% nitrogen. Jinx in to do that, or maybe that
could be. Well, our average, I think, over the last 5 years on the nitrogen level in the barley has been, I think, 1.56 or later. I think it's 1.56. Right. Bruichladdich them personally are looking for between 1.4 and 1.6 for their malting grade. So we're at the higher end of the middle, if you like, you know. But possibly like the rye crop, the barley crop following the rye crop has had no difference in nitrogen levels in the grain as a barley crop that's followed a barley crop kind of thing.
No, it's just, I don't know, I'm a bit of a number nerd, and it's quite fun to sort of hear, you know, and then look back in the next few years and see, was that anything to do with it? And then, well, maybe it was, but it's quite fun to ask the questions. Is the only reason you're putting that growth regulator in because the straw is pointless? Or is it too tall and they're moist?
Too tall. I mean, the first crop of rye we put in, it was, I think, well, it went flat. And I mean completely flat. It grew. We didn't put a regulator on. We kind of went in blind and probably a bit naive. We didn't put enough research into what we did and didn't need to do, which you learn from your mistakes. I'm concerned, but it grew to. It would have been 5 foot plus anyway. That crop of rye. So it was tall, and you know, it was looking tremendous coming to ripening. But we got a westerly gale with heavy rain for probably 2 days, and it was kind of overnight one night, and you went out the next day, and it was just flat to the boards kind of thing. So we thought, if we're not going through that again, so we put the regulator on just to shrink it a wee bit, or not shrink it, but stop it growing so tall.
And how do you apply that?
That's with a sprayer. Just put that on.
It's sprayed, yeah. At what stage?
We put it on we put 2 on. We put 1 on at T1. So when it was just starting to till it a wee bit, and then we put another one on just at flag leaf.
Right.
Some folks will put 3 on, but I don't know. It just seemed that all of a sudden, from flag leaf to blooming ear emergence seemed to happen overnight. So we got the 2 on, and it's looking well at the moment. Like, you know, I'm hoping that we've got enough that it'll stand, because it's quite a good crop. I think it'll be if we get it, it'll be the best winter crop we've had. So fingers crossed, everything goes to plan between now and then.
I know, absolutely. Do you know, it's the 2 things in farming that when you drive past that are absolutely soul destroying to me is a field full of moles and a lodged crop. You know, it's just it just looks like, that's, you know, it's just, no, that couldn't have been a nice experience last year.
We're pretty lucky. We don't have the moles to be, so that's one good thing. We've got a lot of geese that cause problems with the cereals and whatnot, but I was going to say you learn to live with them, but you don't. They scunner you. But one thing, I hate a flat crop, but there's one thing, if it lodges and just kind of tangles itself up, you always find that the kind of, when you combine that, the straw underneath the top of it is just as golden as can be. It's almost protected from the weather. So it's always a worry if it starts to tangle up. You think, if we get a gale and some rain, that's just going to hit the boards, like, you know.
No, absolutely. And what time, when are you harvesting your barley and rye?
Roughly? The rye is about the same time as the barley. Kind of, sometimes the last couple of years has actually been last harvested, which has been kind of well into September.
Yeah.
Barley wise, I think the earliest we've been finished in quite a lot of years has been end of August. But most of the time you're barely getting started at that time. In the beginning of September, first couple of weeks in September, we're usually about good to go, to be quite honest with you.
I don't imagine where you are temperatures on your side very often for very long.
We're usually we don't get much frost or anything. Right. You know, last year and the year before, it was actually the summers were that blooming dry, and we've got a lot of kind of peatier ground, so we kind of try and pick the drier fields to put your barley in, which we've also got a lot of sandy ground, free draining and good dry soil. But the last couple of years, it didn't suit that ground, the barley, so it kind of burnt up. The grain didn't bulk out the way it should have done. Last year, if I'd put all the peaty fields in, I'd probably broken records yield-wise. Moisture would have been in the soil, but you've not got a crystal ball. 3 years ago, the summer was that wet. We didn't have a lot of it, but we did have disease in the barley. Just it was fusarium we had, just the splash effect off the soil with just that much rain throughout June and July. So every year is different, but we've noticed certainly the last couple the summers have been that dry that we're kind of thinking, well, do we risk maybe putting a damper field in and hope that it's still dry kind of end of August, September time,
Yeah, no, to be honest, I said that and kind of forgot you'll be in the Gulf, so you will be quite cosy.
We're wild. You very rarely get frost either. It's certainly in the last 10 years, I think the winters have been getting warmer and wetter. Annually than what we have been. It seems to be coming in more extreme times. Like you'll get massive downpours, for a few days rather than a bit of rain for a month, kind of thing.
Yeah, no. And are you using all your own equipment, or have you got contractors around?
We get contractors in to do the pit silage. Everything else is done by ourselves. There's a few contractors on the island, but the thing is, let's say we're nearly 100 acres of cereal, we're 150 acres of silage. These kind of things, a lot of the silage is baled, which we do ourselves, but the pit silage, obviously we get someone in. But with the contractors, with these kind of things, when you want to go, everyone else is wanting to go. And, especially with the barley, the window's that small. I think if we didn't have our own kit, the farm's always been pretty well kitted, to be fair, but I think if we didn't have our own kit, there'd be a lot of losses, over the years.
And what sort of yields are you looking per hectare, acre, whatever you want to work in? I don't actually even have a clue what you're looking for with rye, to be honest.
Well, rye, we're probably only getting about 1.5 tons to the acre, but it's, there's there's more money to be, in the rye because, for that reason. Barley, we want to be getting 2 ton plus, but we've only had, I think our best year was 2.34 ton to the acre over 70 acres we had that year, which was 2018. I think we'll probably be averaging, the 5-year average is probably 1.8, 1.9 ton to the acre. So we're not breaking records, but there's money. We're making money at it, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, that's what matters. I don't think being in the Guinness book does much for you in that sense.
No.
What was it what was the record? Oh, it was mill and wheat, I think. Was it 19 or was it 17 in Leicester? It was just Leicestershire, Lincolnshire, sorry, a couple of years ago.
I can't remember what it was, but it was massive yields anyway.
Mental, like absolutely. That's a hectare for those of you listening, by the way. I don't work in acres. It takes me. I'm writing your thing down and timesing it by 2.47. Yeah. No, yeah. It's been quite fun to sort of sit down, chat, Andrew. I mean, I've been following. Who's behind the Instagram and Facebook? Is it yourself or Sophie?
It's mainly Sophie, to be honest. A lot of the pictures and videos and whatnot I'll be taking, and I'll just send on to Sophie. If it wasn't for her, that wouldn't be where it is. So we've got quite Instagram, especially. There's quite a following on it now. So it's the thing is, the more folks you get, you're really having to keep up with the posts and keep the stuff going, so. But it's good. I mean, we do tend to show sometimes the darker side of farming as well, like things have gone wrong and whatnot. So it's good fun, and it's nice to show what you're doing and to, be proud of what you're doing as well, and try and support the industry, because it's certainly needed.
Yeah, and I think a lot of, not all, but a lot of the people I have on here have some kind of following, purely because I wouldn't be able to find them if they didn't. And it's good that we're sort of all doing that. A lot of people are just doing that. Some people don't want to show the dark side, and fair enough, but I've always been of the opinion, like you're saying there yourself, that it's real. It's what's happening.
Yeah.
there's no point in trying to sort of pretend it's not. And I should also say, if you're listening, check out Coull Farm Islay. If it helps, I'm going to say it the way that it sounds. Coull Farm Islay, because that's what I've been calling it forever. So Instagram, Facebook, and to be honest, I'm quite a fan of the TikToks as well.
That's definitely Sophie. She's responsible for that, but it's quite good fun. I'm not into that kind of thing, like, you know. But once you go on to it and see it, and it is good, like, you know, and that's got quite a following coming on with it now as well. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, I for the longest time was like, I watch a lot of TikToks. The amount of couples I follow on TikTok, just think, oh, they're cute. That's what I watch on TikTok. That's what I watch. That and that farming stuff. And I was like, I'm not made for this. I'm not made for this. I'm not made for this. Now I'm doing dances at shows and stuff like that. It's changed me. It's changed me. But
trying to involve that with we're working with SRUC, Robert Ramsey from there, and David Kerr from Scott EID. We've been working with them the last couple of years with this UHF tagging in the cattle.
Oh yes.
So we're trying to kind of, this year we'll be trying to maybe involve TikTok and whatnot with kind of videos with that, of how that's working and whatnot. But the problem with that is, at the moment, there's no date been set for when it's been coming. You need to have it. So, you know, we've kind of held off a wee bit until it becomes a bit more definitive. We started putting videos up originally, and it was just folks were asking, what's the benefit of this and why are you doing that? And we didn't have the answers. So we're waiting on that, but we'll involve all the socials with that and try and make it a bit of fun at the same time.
It's good crack, and it's you know, I've been speaking to the SREC marketing team and stuff, and well, I mean, we're filming this about 2 or 3 months in advance, but I'm just like, people watch this. If you just dance, they have fun. It doesn't have to be. I'm not saying put a video of someone doing a degree. No one wants to watch that. You know, social media is a weird old place, but it's a fun old place. It's good fun. But no, as I said, it's been great to sort of sit down and have a chat. Meet so many folk on this whole online farming scene community thing, and you never actually really meet them. But we're speaking off camera. Things sounds like the shows you will be at will not lie in line with the ones I'm at, but I'm sure we'll meet at some point. Aye. But before we sort of we end the podcast, no one gets away. I've not forgotten yet, and I have done 51, so I don't think I'm going to start forgetting now. Without 2 questions that I ask everyone. The first one being, first off, I meant to ask actually about half an hour ago. That sums me up really. You came back to farm 14 years ago. What age was that? Was that quite young?
I was 20. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you're a young looking fellow, you know. I'll be
Don't
honest,
get that video.
I was thinking a hell of a lot younger than 20. That's for sure. I mean, I'm 25, and I'm like, we're pretty similar looking here. So I was like, did he start at 12? You know, but yeah, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Is the first question, and the second question is, if you had any tips for folk coming into the industry, what would they be?
5 years time, hopefully still on the farm, but having made some improvements, and maybe with the stock side of things, maybe wheedled out a few more problems and have a bit more performance recorded, well, not recorded, but performance based flock and herd. As for tips, I think patience will be one of them. You know, it's not easy. I don't know about on the mainland, but certainly on the island, it's not easy for folks to get into farming. But I think if you really want to get into it, you will get there. Like, you know, it might take time, but you might have to go work for 3, 4, 5, 6 different farms until the opportunity comes up. But I think, you know, don't give up would be the biggest part of advice, because farming is needing young blood in it, in my opinion. You know, even Dad, he's nearly 68 now, I think he is, and he's saying the same thing. He reckons there's a generation of shepherds lost. You know, I don't know, what's it, 59 or 60, the average age of the farmers at the moment, and that's not a great place to be. You know, I think we're needing younger folk, and I think, you know, it seems to be slowly happening. And, you know, even with social media thing, folks are maybe, oh well, that's something I could do. And, you know, a lot of farming's you're kind of born with it. You know, a lot of folks say you're born a stockman or you're born whatever, but you know, you can learn it all as well. So I say, don't give up would be the biggest bit of advice. Just be patient, and you know, chance will come.
Yeah, good one. And it's, do you know, it's the whole average age 59, 60. It was that certainly 4 or 5 years ago. I can't imagine it's much different, but I do feel, and I don't know if this is just because more youngsters are on social media, just, you know, naturally, that is changing, and maybe that sort of people following folk like Cammy or, you know, whoever, Tom Pemberton, those big folks, and then sort of whittling down to like yourselves and that sort of thing. They're seeing like, oh shit, that looks fun. I could do that. But hopefully that change is happening. And you said, I don't know what it's like in the mainland. It's the exact same. You know, you can get, there's endless amounts of jobs, but you know, having a farming enterprise is very, very difficult to come by. That's a national issue, really. But it's where we are, and it's good to sort of have the conversations like we've had today. So I hope you've enjoyed coming on yourself.
It's been good fun.
Yeah. Well, maybe next time, maybe we'll do a right. No, I've been saying it wrong every time. Coull Farm Islay, got it. 2.0, and actually have Sophie on next time. Maybe we can arrange that. Maybe she has a couple of Coull Islas before. She might be happy to join.
We'll work on it.
Exactly. That's it. So yeah, no, it's been great to have you on. For those of you listening, I hope you've enjoyed another episode. It's kind of mad. We've had 51 now. That's kind of crazy to think that I have had I've done this throughout 5 different houses. That's a weird way to put it. I've never thought of it that way. I don't know where that came from. Strange mind. Met 51 different folk. And yeah, what I will say is I don't have a clue who number 52 is because I haven't arranged it yet. Don't know what's coming, which is exciting for me as well. This is great fun. And if you have any folk that you would like to see on the podcast, get in touch. And if I don't like them, I won't have them on. If I do like them, I'll have them on. That's sort of how it goes. I'm not going to... That sounded really cutthroat, didn't it? So yeah, we'll see you next week for number 52. Hope you enjoyed number 51. And thanks again, Andrew.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Well, that's it. Another R2Kast finished. Another agricultural mind opened up. And I would just like to say that getting these guests on board, it does take time, and it always has done. But I've now went weekly, and with that comes even more time required. And I would just like to finally thank once more the Scottish Farmer for sponsoring the show and making that much more possible. Please be sure to get in touch if you've any ideas of people you'd like to see on the podcast, or maybe ideas you have for me presenting better, because I definitely do require that. See you in the next one.